What's up? It's your boy Gimpzilla coming at you with another gaming strategy video. This week we are looking at the real-time strategy genre, RTSs. So, as a whole, um, we've all heard it. People love saying it. Real-time strategy is dead, and I'm here to say that it's not. And you and I are going to examine, a couple RTS titles, make some predictions on future game titles that might come out of this genre. And it's going to be in kind of a video essay format. So please remember it's an opinion piece at its core. And with that, let's get into it. It's been more than 20 years since the height of the RTS genre. Most critics place the peak for these games in the mid 90s to early 2000s with titles we've all loved, such as Command and Conquer, Warcraft, StarCraft, Age of Empires, and literally dozens of others. One of the dozens of games released during this peak period is Majesty. The game itself advertised not as a strategy game, but as a fantasy simulation game. Uh, Gamers, we're going to do our own thing. We later described it ourselves as Majesty being an RTS. But okay, we have a fantasy simulation released in March of 2000. How exactly did Majesty try and cut through to the strategy fan base? They used innovation, right? To keep the gameplay brief, they completely automated your entire village. There's only one resource, gold, and the only interaction with gold income is building placement. Villagers walk physically from building to building, so your layout determines, how quickly your tax income can generate. Furthermore, army units are recruited by the player but have independent AI, and ultimately, they're going to do as they please. The AI is, slightly smarter than what I'm making it out to be. Unit management is huge because, for example, in the game, making rangers, they're far more effective and likely to scout the map for you compared to a monk or a more defensive unit innately programmed to stand in your base and defend. So, on top of controlling tax routes and army composition, the player king has one final ability, and that's the ability to set up quest markers in the world for gold. So, these quest markers entice your army to complete certain actions. So, a standard game of Majesty would look something like building a tight, defendable base, recruiting the proper units for your current quest, further developing your city with markets and blacksmiths, where your heroes then spend the gold that they've earned on training and weapons. So this brings the gold back to your Majesty, the player king, and that circle repeats, right? You conquer the map, and then you praise your little robot paladin who survived to level 18 and slayed the dragon for you. So honestly, Majesty, when played even by today's standards, is an absolute gem. Full voice acting, robust army options, huge single player campaign. Yet this is not a title in most of our libraries. So personally, I think there's a number of factors contributing. Between Majesty 1 and 2, the IP changed developers, so many core fans, weren't satisfied with the second release, citing it was basically the same game with a graphical update. The new developer neglected to improve some of the core AI mechanics, which are, really the heart in a game like this. More in my mind, Majesty just had poor timing. Released in 2000 and then Majesty 2 in 2009. I consider these titles to be late to market for kind of what they ultimately offered. These games still centered around a point and click upgrade system. This was abused by so many RTS real time strategy games of that time. and I really believe that that had gotten stale at that point. So in modern gaming, nobody really wants a text upgrade that says, my archers are 10% more useful. I appreciate that. So there were other titles at that time that were way past these text boxes. So most notably would be Civilization 4 and 5. I could probably do a whole video on real-time versus turn-based, but let's just like not get me started on that. But just understand that Civilization is a game that took strategy games to a whole new level, right? With most people agreeing that, Civilization 4 released back in, 2004 being kind of the true birth point for that game. Um, it's to the point that I had to Google what 4x means because, apparently turn-based strategy is not descriptive enough for these things. But, it was Sid Meier's attention to detail during that game that went to the core of its strategy concepts. And it kind of proved that the player wanted more than surface level army games. Okay, the audience had changed, and unfortunately, RTS games had developed into, simple army games in that day's market. So, anyways, that's what I feel killed Majesty. Speaking in general terms, RTS as a whole, right? It was a lack of innovation. Strategy games in general give the player a ton of control, and a lot of these games just lack scope. So if I were to go too far one way, you miss out over here, or if you cut corners over there, the game doesn't feel complete. You see a lot of developers struggle with how to balance realism and good gameplay. Um, Now, again, I don't want to dwell on the shortfalls of real-time strategy, but as stated, through games like Civilization or maybe even Clash of Clans and many other games, there are elements of the RTS genre that persist into today's era and today's market. So for the takeaway here, it's basically just Majesty was a good game, an innovative game, and innovation is going to be the theme moving forward. So the strategy game needs to change over time and adjust with the players. We are evolving. Defining real-time strategy is tough. So I personally go with a very wide definition. Guns versus butter. It's an economic example popularized around World War One, with guns relating to how much of your economic resources do you allocate to your military, compared to butter, which would be your economic allocation to crops, schools, infrastructure, right? Real-time strategy brings all of these elements into consideration. Do I need to militarize early, or can I turtle and research X, Y, and Z, right? Guns versus butter. So with a wide definition, a lot might fall into this category, right? But I want to highlight, two specific examples that have been extremely popular and relevant in recent times. So I hinted at Clash of Clans earlier, but I think anyone would have a hard time arguing that Clash Royale is not an RTS, right? This is Supercell's mobile spinoff, Clash Royale. It boils RTS down so perfectly, it fits in your hand. It's a mobile app you can download to any device at this point. So villager and resource management is simplified into an automatic refillable mana bar, where army micromanagement is automated through your AI after your Royal Highness right there deploys their units, right? So mini battles are played out in real time, and it feels great, to anyone with RTS experience. So consistent updates, you have clans and trading, weekly tournaments, not to mention worldwide meta with constantly revolving deck lists. You know, there's obviously some shortcomings in Clash Royale, most notably the paywall, but at its core gameplay, at its core gameplay, Clash Royale is stupidly fun, and I feel a great homage to the RTS genre. So the other title I feel a lot of people, you know, might not consider in this area would be auto chess, right? Seeing its official release in 2019, auto chess, literally set off a war between Steam and Riot Games, quickly trying to produce, a market-ready knockoff, essentially. So, um, when explained by most, you often hear like new genre-defining game, but at its core, I would consider auto chess to be a real-time strategy. Here's a philosophical question you can ask yourself: is asynchronous gameplay the same thing as real time? So is turn-based really turn-based if all armies move and react at the same time, right? Auto chess explores this idea greatly, and I mean highly recommended by myself, right? At its core, it's a deep economic system, including both win streaks and losing streaks. Meaning I've literally lost rounds on purpose because that's the best strategical thing I can be doing right there. Um, and you need to interact with these economic systems because the whole military portion of the game depends on one single system of buying units. Okay, so if you don't have the economic structure, you cannot succeed in the battles. Guns versus butter, right? Once again, so once you buy the military units, the battles, they unfold in front of you through automated artificial intelligence. Your only input into the battle system would be, units you place there. So the upgrades, the items that they receive, the military formations. The gameplay runs incredibly deep. There are, many different item upgrade routes, as well as team compositions to explore. And here's the one thing. Remember this: the game was built on Dota 2's player created studio, which was designed after Dota was developed on Warcraft's player created studio. So there's all kinds of next level inception linking the game back to real time strategy. So ultimately, auto chess is an extremely simple and extremely innovative approach to an old genre. Okay, and that's kind of my point here, is that there are many roots tying many game systems back to real time strategy. Okay, so I wonder if you notice a theme in some of these more popular titles that I've highlighted. As stated in Chapter 1, the scope was the issue for RTS games. So you struggle with going too deep and not far enough. So the question becomes, how can you bridge that gap, right? And Majesty, Clash Royale, Auto Chess, these three games, I think are bridging that gap, right? And they're bridging it through artificial intelligence. It really is genius, right? You can develop and expand systems as complex as you need for depth, then rely on artificial intelligence for management and upkeep. Artificial intelligence makes these systems approachable for the player, and ultimately, how developers should apply AI into their games is debatable. And again, I'm really just highlighting it's a question I feel we're going to have answered with time as we see more of these game systems implemented. So other games that fit this mold you might look into would be Driftland or Dawn of Man, both released in 2019. There are some of the more recent popular games embracing, artificial intelligence. There's still a long way to go with this mindset, and so to answer the question of the video, like I would picture the next AAA RTS to involve heavy AI influences, seeing improvements in both, probably army control and social decision making. To go, one step further, I would imagine a popular RTS embracing elements, maybe closer to a tower defense style game, where building placement has more impact on AI choices when compared currently, army control is most of your micromanagement in today's RTS. So finally, because it's 2019 and monetization is a thing, I would not be surprised to see, future RTSs implement, more of a massively multiplayer style features into their games, unlockable races, skins, army replacement or replenishment, basically like everything I hate. But that's more or less my prediction for a free to play, highly monetized, AI controlled tower defense style game that is the future of real time strategy. So, shout out to Orcs Must Die, my favorite tower defense game. But, um, that's kind of where I want to leave it. Is the player base willing to accept these changes? Whether it's the simplified, versions presented in Clash Royale or a complete sim takeover, like Majesty. I do think artificial intelligence is growing. There are enthusiasts that are making these things, and that's where it's at. Is will the player base accept it? So a game's popularity base is only based on its players, and I genuinely implore you to explore some of those newer games. Right, find a title that shows some type of innovation, as proven through auto chess. These other manufacturers and developers, right? They're gonna join a wave in motion. So it's up to us, the single gamer, to go out there and play these games and like the ones that we do and support the ones we do, spread word, so that can echo, kind of up into those chambers, right? So um, find some of these smaller developers, show an interest in what they're doing, and it, might just change the future. So that's going to do it, guys. I'm going to say thanks for watching. I do hope you appreciate the content. Please leave comments below on what your future RTS might look like. And then, as always, giving the video a thumbs up is the single best thing you can do to support the video. Thumbs up, get this video thrown into other people's feeds so we can spread our strategy love around the internet. So links below. Thank you, and I will see you guys next time.